Hello, people. Today we're going to have a little chat with Caprice to get to know Caprice. I'm a good friend of hers, and I kind of like to show you what I see, not what she would think that she needs to be seen as, or something you could read or read as a resume. That's all on her website. I'm sure she's got it all there. So, Cappy, hello.
Hello, Sue.
So, this is about get to know you. So can we start with your education? Because I know your education is all fancy and stuff like that. And to somebody that's international, I and never partook. What is a Carnegie Mellon and why is it relevant?
So, the first thing I'll say is that I'm highly schooled,
Hmm.
and I realized in my 50s that I wasn't well educated.
Hmm.
And that was crazy because I homeschooled both of my daughters.
Hmm.
But I went to public school until 10th grade. And then I went to a girls' boarding school in Western Pennsylvania, and I was bored. The reason I went to boarding school was because I was just bored. Like, I learned in probably third grade that school wasn't about learning. It was about checking off boxes, getting gold stars, getting the grades. And I was just bored out of my gourd my entire school career. I remember sitting in second grade and looking at the clock and just watching the second hand go around and being like, this feels like prison. So, but I mean, I was good at school. It was easy for me. I mean, I guess I was blessed because a lot of people don't learn in that auditory sequential way that school is designed, but I could do it. So then I went to boarding school in 10th grade, was bored at this little one, transferred to one outside of Philadelphia for 2 years. Um, I mean, I don't know if it was the best experience. Kurt Vonnegut taught there a long time before I got there, and he described it as a really messed up school for rich kids. Now,
Ah,
my parents weren't rich. My parents were born dirt poor. My mom in Appalachian Mountains, no electricity till 16. My dad, Depression, Chicago, but they just worked and worked and worked. And I guess I was so miserable in public school, they wanted to put me there. So then I went to University of Virginia undergrad, double majors in cultural anthropology and foreign affairs. Worked for two US senators when I got out of UVA. I saw how the government didn't work, and I wasn't on the track to go to law school. That's what everybody there was doing. They were like out of college, build your resume, go to law school. And that wasn't me. So I went back into the private sector, worked in marketing for a private company, bored, still bored. So I decided I want to go into business strategy consulting. I called some firms. They said, well, then get your MBA. So I went to Carnegie Mellon and got my MBA in finance. That's my
okay,
education story.
so it seems like because the thing that really intrigues me is this rebellious, like something about you, and it sounds like at an early age, just looked around and said, something isn't for me.
Yeah, like I never felt like I fit into the system. It always seemed like bullshit to me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I was attracted to anthropology as a major, which actually ended up being pretty useless. And now that I know that it was invented for eugenics, I'm like, oh, like so much unlearning I've had to do, like unlearning the theory of evolution and all that stuff. But I like the way anthropologists think because they go into a system, an institution, a culture, and just figure out the patterns of power and how things work. And I always just was able to do that. Like I was never someone who could drink the Kool-Aid. I'm just not that person. I just always go, what is going on here? And who has the power and how do things work? And I mean, it was a useful tool when I worked for two US senators. It was a useful tool when I was in corporate consulting. It's a useful tool helping people build businesses. But yeah, I mean, it was rebellious, but it was more just because if something doesn't make sense to me, I just keep asking questions like, this doesn't make sense. I'm not someone who just like, oh, that's just the way it is. I'm like, this makes no sense. And I look around and I'm like, why does everybody think this makes sense? Because so much in our world is fictitious and doesn't make sense.
Agreed. Um, Okay, so then we've taken this energy into your children. Now, I know you well enough to know that your children are the greatest accomplishments that you've ever done, or still doing, because being a parent doesn't ever stop. So, in that, what were your greatest lessons about raising two now young women adults?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is I read all of the wrong parenting books, right? And then
Good.
I quickly realized, well, most people shouldn't be writing parenting books. Every soul comes into this world completely unique, and I think mothers just need to trust their intuition. So I remember looking into the eyes of my first daughter when she was just a couple days old, and I saw wisdom in those eyes, like wisdom beyond my comprehension. And I was like, you did not come in a blank slate. Like, here you are. God has trusted me with your soul to grow you, to protect you, and to just let you flourish into the person you were meant to be. And so I think that my mothering was always with humility. I never viewed my children as possessions. Like they weren't mine. They were given to me just to care for a short time. And I was also not someone who always, held strongly onto her beliefs. So whenever I shared a belief with my children, I was like, well, this is what I believe, and I want you to come up with your own beliefs. And I think the other thing that was unique about me is that I never was that parent that was like, say thank you, say this, say that. What I modeled was virtue. I mean, I'm not perfect. I mean, the other thing I will say right now is I apologize to my daughters so many times. Like when I lost my temper, when I wasn't the mother I wanted to be, I would just say, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Because my parents never asked, they never said, I'm sorry. Never, not once. Well, I shouldn't say that. My father, at the end of his life, looked at me and said, I'm sorry, I wasn't a better parent. I was not a good father, but that was the very end. And so I didn't want them to put me on a pedestal like I was God because I'm not. I'm just their mother. So when I screwed up, I said, I'm sorry, forgive me. And I just wanted them to grow into not a mini me, but the best version of themselves. And I didn't know that I would homeschool, but when I was pregnant, I was 2 months pregnant with my first daughter, and I read this article in the Sun magazine by John Taylor Gatto when it was his acceptance speech as the Teacher of the Year award in New York City. And I just read that and I was like, oh, unschooling is a thing. I'm going to unschool my kids. This is awesome. I hated school. It was prison. And then those ideas quickly fell apart when my oldest daughter, Sage, was 2. And I said, she's a, what am I going to do every day? She's 2. I go, well, you're going to spend time with mommy. And she looks at me, Sue, and she goes, boring. I was like, what? Are you
That's
kidding me?
awesome. That is a
Boring, mom. She's
mini
2.
you
I'm
coming
like,
out.
she's got
Yeah.
these like little Goldilocks curls. I'm like, oh no, now what am I going to do? I can't just unschool. So that started my journey of starting self-directed learning centers, which I first started in North Carolina, then California, because children want to be together. They don't necessarily want to be at home. And we kept going back to homeschooling as a default. But it was always about them getting to know who they really were, how they learned to learn, what their gifts and talents were. Like, I didn't want them to have the midlife crisis I had when I was 30 years old. I'm like, you're not going through that. That was too painful. I followed all of society's promises and, you know, them pretending like, vice is virtue and everything. I didn't want that for my kids. So it was really creating a safe space for them to explore and this all this stuff about like making children independent when they're really young didn't work. Like you let them depend on you until they feel safe, and then they keep moving out further and further and further. And both of my daughters are very independent. I mean, they will call me with questions about their businesses or whatever, help with this, help with that. But they're strong, they're independent, they're good, they're kind, they're compassionate. And it's not because I shoved any of that down their throat. I just modeled it to them.
It's funny that it's like at the younger ages, we kind of go, oh no, they're independent, but they still call, and it's like, now we're older. You've just lost your father. And now I've got my aging mother. And it's interesting how it goes from they're a pain in the butt and I don't want anything to do with them to holy crap, this journey might end soon.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's quite humbling when we can look at the 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 evolution of being human, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. No, I just caught you saying that. It's like they're independent, but there's I'm still their mom. They're still calling
Oh
me. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I
my
mean, if
mom's
I had
85.
one
I
piece of
still
yeah, if I had one piece of parenting advice to give anyone, it was be never act and never speak unless it's coming from a place of love, right? If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're tired, give yourself a timeout, recenter yourself in your love for your children, and then speak, then act.
yeah.
That's really,
I usually I usually say at least start if you're gonna start with the truth. Start
yeah,
with I'm hungry, I'm tired. Know the filter you're dealing with.
right, right.
Like, and it's self-awareness. It's like
Yeah,
not just it's situational awareness. I mean, I've just been dealing with some young boys, and all I want to say to them is if you were situationally aware, this would have never happened.
yeah. If you had
Conflict.
self-awareness. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
So, because this is towards more of your professional stuff, at this place you're at now, what is the main driver for you being of service? Or is it just be of service?
Well, it's primarily being of service. And God's really gifted me with so many gifts and talents. So my prayer every day is just let me use them in service, whoever needs them. Um, I think that in my coaching career, more of my clients have come because they were dissatisfied in the corporate world. And they really wanted to do something more meaningful, more purpose driven. I've worked with a lot of executives who are very successful, very wealthy. They like followed what society said to be happy. You do this, you get the status, you get the degrees, you get the money, da 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 da. And then they would come and say, Caprice, I'm so empty. Like, isn't there more than this? So it's always been just I mean, the first thing that I want people to do is like, who do you know yourself to be? Because we all put on these personas just to get along, to be accepted, and then it's like we're lying to ourselves and we know it. Like, why are we in a society that, I mean, I know that people struggle financially, especially with this crazy economy, people working many, many jobs. But for those who have gotten material wealth and whatever, like they have more than they need and they're still empty. So that's not what this game is. This is not what life is about. I mean, life is about you coming back to your true self and getting rid of all the garbage that is not you, all the beliefs, all the habits, all the negative patterns that are not you. But then once you do that, I don't believe that you want the 4-hour workday and just sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais. You want to do meaningful work. You want to make an impact on the world. And so that's where my business consulting comes in because I really do like helping people build businesses that reflect their gifts and talents. And I'm like, if someone's just like, oh, I just want to make 25,000 a month, like I'm not your coach. If you say, I want to do something in service and make the greatest positive impact on the world that I can, then that would, I could be your coach and your consultant. I volunteer at the local business incubator, and it's wonderful to see entrepreneurs like really build something that they're proud of that helps people. I think, and it's interesting. I was thinking about this before we talked. Like the challenge is that we live in a society in America. You're in Australia, I'm in America. It's a bit different. But there's so many people out there that are so slick and so savvy and so good at self-promotion. But when you dig out, under all of that, it's just smoke and mirrors, right?
It's
And so
when
the
I
people that have the stake that like it actually really help often lack the sizzle is kind of what I said, you know? So I'm really good at what I do, but self-promotion is not easy for me, especially because I view humility as a very important virtue,
hence the reason why I offered to do this little interview.
right?
I've always classified those people as the bag of chips theory. You got a big bag of chips, it's full. It's like it feels full, but you open it, it's only a quarter full and it's full of hot air or it's full of air.
Right. Right.
So I just look at people like a bag of chips. I'm like, okay, well, what's the substance behind the hot air? Especially with, I mean, the dark arts and the advertising and the link in between how advertising actually took on what people could consider the dark arts. It's so that
Right. I mean, advertising
self-promotion,
is really the art of convincing people to buy stuff that they neither want nor need, right?
which is the dark arts.
Right.
And it uses the same techniques as the dark arts. If you think about it, you're persuading people to believe that they're not good enough until they.
Right. Right. And I think, I think you and I both have the perspective that there's nobody in this world that's broken. Nobody needs to be fixed.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you and
I
I have
mean,
both endured a lot of trauma in this
yeah.
life
I think people don't need to be fixed, they need to be held.
and seen and listened
Yeah,
to and
yeah,
witnessed. Right. And
yeah.
so I guess the work that I do is to empower them both as a person and if they choose to step in the role as a business owner then that as well that they because people have their own answers. They're just usually not asking the right questions or they're being tripped up by false beliefs, by false narratives, by conditioning, by programming. You can wipe all of that programming and conditioning away and then they're like it's like you're awakening them from a trance.
Well, I mean, technically it is. I mean, human beings are trans machines. I sat in front of the TV last night and I started scrolling and searching weird stuff. And all of a sudden I looked up and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. That's a
Mm.
trance.
Yeah.
Attention, concentration, and focus, and that's what it is. But it's so interesting because we all, especially with the digital age, we're all living in this virtual world that doesn't, yeah.
Well, it's not real. There's nothing that's real. And you don't know what's real. You don't know what people are real. And so I always encourage people to just bloom where you are planted. Go out and grow some food. Make sure you're eating, healthy food and clean water, breathing clean air to the best of your ability. Make relationships in your community, laugh a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, like there's
Hug,
no
cry.
joy to be found online.
Well, and it's about unity, it's about the idea like that even my chiropractor yesterday, because we were talking about how you can sense somebody's energy, right? Or and he was talking about the telepathy tapes, and he goes, and then they said it's all like consciousness is all one. And I'm like, dude, you've been working in this kind of stuff for a long time. That just hit you now, or is it just it needed to hit now? But it was fascinating because it is the separation that is and the relationships like friendship I think is a lesson that if everybody learned at a young age and that value of friendship, that push and pull, that boundaries, yet you care about the person. And I think that that's probably the most important lesson you could ever learn in life is how to relate and be
Mm.
related to.
Well, and what I've come to realize is what everybody wants is unconditional love.
Absolutely.
And so few of us get it. I think, going back to my parenting is because I know that my parents both loved me. Like they said so at the end of their life. But growing up, it felt very conditional, very conditional. I got attention and love when I did what they wanted. When I didn't, I mean, I was sent to my room all the time for just speaking my mind, right? So I was determined to give my daughters unconditional love. And while I was firm and I corrected behavior, it was never in a shameful way. It was always with love and respect and dignity. And my goal was always to get them to the point at a young age so that they had self-discipline, so I wouldn't have to discipline them. And you can't wait till they're teenagers. It's way too late, you know?
Yep.
So
So,
unconditional love. And I think in my work, I just see people as they are. I listen, I don't judge. That's not my job. My job is not to judge, you know? I don't know what's going on in their lives, and I'm going to leave that to a higher power.
that's
Um,
actually something that I wanted to amplify is through our journey. I've admired how watching you, go in and out, and we don't see things the same a lot, like some of the time.
mhm.
But you never have that energy of that's wrong. I don't accept that. Like, I mean, and I feel you. So you're always open to whatever I have to say. And I've always appreciated that about you. And that was something that I wanted to point out that A, silly quote, you weren't born yesterday. And B, you understand the perspectives are very different between people, and it is only language. And if we can go past the language, you can see past the language on where that person is alluding to, or you've got good insight to see past the language and the construct of what people's realities, I guess, is. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think it also helps that I have endured a lot of trauma and suffering in my life. Um, and when I was going through my divorce 10 years ago, I mean, I just kept breaking into a million pieces, and it took me a long time to figure out how to put myself back together, and it became less frequent that I'd break apart into a million pieces, and it was always at night, so my daughters couldn't see me. But I have been in a relationship with someone who is a very dark, evil person and so good at lying and so good at hiding his true being. So when you go through something like that, it just gives you so much compassion for people. And I remember, just self-hatred because I was like, how did I not see this? Because I didn't like once the blindfold was ripped off and I saw it, everything came into focus, but I couldn't see it. And, I think I've told you I went through this online program just for people who, mainly women, who were out of relationships with psychopaths. And the woman that put it together said, they're sicker than you are smart. So I think the important thing also in this conversation is to know that we're in a spiritual battle. And anybody who denies that is delusional. And guess what? In this spiritual battle, there aren't multiple sides, there are two sides. You can choose good, true, and beautiful, or you can choose evil, false, and ugly. That's it. Those are your two choices, and you make those choices on a daily basis. And it doesn't mean that I'm perfect, and it doesn't mean that I don't, like I fall down and I pick myself up and I repent and I ask for forgiveness, and that's my journey. But to be like, oh, unicorns and rain, no, we're in a very dark, fallen world. It's hard
And
here.
and the thing is all of us fall into it, even the habits that we've been advertised, marketed to think that to be in part of society, we need to have these things. And I think
Mhm.
the older you get, the uh, the more you slow things down. Like when you're young, you've got that vitality, so you're in like Flynn grabbing everything. But then the older you get, you just kind of slow down and go, hang on a second, do I really need that, or was that just good marketing?
Right.
Or they have that next door. Did that change their lives at all?
Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
mean, I really raised my daughters not to be these rabid consumers
Mm.
because when we were shopping and they wanted something, I would just say, well, will you have more joy acquiring it or using it?
Very good
And
question.
they'd be
I
like,
mean that,
because the acquisition is like a dopamine hit or something, right? And then it sits in the corner and collects dust. And if they were really pushing for it, I was like, well, why don't you buy it? And they'd be like, well, I don't
mm,
want it that much. So there's things that parents can do to slow down that consumerism and make them be like, what?
I mean,
Yeah,
and if,
this,
if the if the parents are aware of their own consumerism, that is.
yeah.
Um, just back to pointing that with business consulting, now I've never been a business consultant, but I've worked on the emotional side of things.
Hmm.
But my guess would be that it would all be a pattern, that it would be starting with the person's perception of something within themselves due to something. So
Well, I'm usually hired by the CEO to work on problems and issues that keep them awake at night,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's things that they don't have the skill set or the time to deal with. And I love working with, business owners, founders who have grown their business to a certain level where it's profitable, but they're still using all of these outdated manual systems. Maybe they're using spreadsheets or pen and paper, and they also don't have transparency into all the people that they've hired. What are they doing? What's making money? What's not making money? So, I mean, one of the last companies I worked with, they called me the Swiss Army knife. Like he would just throw things at me. He's like, what about this? What about this? And so I built, an asset management database, a project management, system. I developed, assessments for their employees. I helped him with recruitment and would interview people. So it's kind of, I don't know. I guess what I love to do is problem solve and just figure things out when it looks sticky and complicated and doesn't seem to work. Like I can usually figure that out. I guess one thing I learned early is like I'm not a good task person. Like I don't want to do tasks over and over, but if you throw something sticky at me, I can usually figure it out.
Well, it kind of goes back to the pattern that you were talking about when you were a kid. I get bored. It means you're smart. Like if you were looking at a kid in school who was, twiddling their hair, bored, and it was the
Mhm.
hardest subject ever, where the teacher's going, I can't do anything because I've got a group of people there. These kids are here and this kid's bored.
Right.
So to me, it's like a pattern of you just being a smart cookie and loving to unravel things because it actually, I mean, I'm one of those people too. I love, give me a
Yeah.
problem.
Give
Give
me
me
a
a problem.
really
Even
sticky one.
even if it's not a problem, just give it to me and I'll
Yeah.
untangle it. But like that's something that I wanted to show, that it's not just a job, it's actually a pattern of your own personality that you really enjoy untying things
Yeah.
and trying to make sense of it. Yeah, it's
Yeah. And I
fascinating.
think, the comment that I've gotten most when I've either been working in a work environment or consulting is that I just have a very like calming influence on people. There's something like people always say, you're so calm, Caprice. Like, so I'm very good in high pressure situations. I probably should have gone into like risk management or risk mitigation or something because throw a crisis at me and I'm just cool as a cucumber, right? I'm like, hmm.
I can actually I can say that like I'm the when we're in battle buddy mode, I'm the hothead, she's the calm one.
Yeah, I'm like, no, no, hey.
Simmer down, we can't do that. I'm like, um, which I mean, I think both types of aspects are absolutely valuable, but I do know that there's something about your tone, the tone of your voice and your sound is very calming. And I've observed, and like there is that she's got the it factor, Miss Caprice. Like, I mean, I have to tell people. I've seen it. I've seen it in action. She's got the it factor. So let's conclude this. What are your goals for the next future? And even if it's not precise goaling, but what are you looking to do, even if it's in a general sense? What are you looking to achieve in this next phase of your life? What would you like to walk away and go, I did something here?
That's a great question, Sue. I just think so many people are so miseducated, misguided about who they are and what their abilities are, what their fake limitations are, you know? Like, there are some evil controllers of this world, and the best way that they control it is by fooling people into thinking that they're weak, powerless, stupid. They have to look outside of themselves for, authority and permission and everything. So I guess whether I'm doing it with business owners, with CEOs, with just individuals who have endured trauma, who are not happy with the trajectory of their life, is to get them to step into their true self, their true power, and create from that. Because we're not consumers. We're not born here to consume. We're born here to create. I feel like we're an extension of the creator. We're given reason and creativity and discernment for a reason, and that reason is to create something good, beautiful, and true. So, whether I'm working in the capacity of a business consultant or working with people for emotional healing, I don't really do a lot with homeschooling coaching, even though it's a passion, you know. I've written 3 books about it, but it's just really, having people step into their true authenticity and power. And from there, they're unstoppable. What's stopping them is all of the bullshit that's been loaded on top of them from society and school and bad parenting and conditioning and programming. And they're just always looking outside of themselves for answers, not realizing that everything they have, they were born with. They just got disconnected and they forgot,
Hallelujah to that, because it's the truth. We
right?
both do it in different ways, but yeah, that's the essence of everything is you kind of look at people and it's like usually if you can help that person dislodge that pattern, it frees up that amount of, yeah, creativity.
And I
It's just a
think
beautiful way that you said, we're here to create, we're not here to consume.
right. And I think most people are under the mistaken notion that they're controlled by their circumstances, right? I'm angry, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm frustrated because of this and that person and this. And once you actually get control of your inner state of being, which you can do that.
Mhm.
And you can say, I do not consent to that negative thought. I do not consent to that negative emotion. That is not who I am. That's a little, that's a demonic attack sometimes. It's a negative pattern that they've just habituated. So once you really have control of your inner state of being, life is a lot easier, a lot more joyful, a lot more peaceful.
Well, and it's
So
also like, I think sometimes what people mistake as a physical imbalance, um, like, I mean, physical imbalance as your hormones change, you're hungry, you're tired. Most
mhm.
people don't actually go there first, which I find interesting because being a woman that was affected by hormones, I had to pay attention and go, okay, hang on, that isn't me, that was my hormones. Not
Right.
giving hormones excuse, but going, I'm mid-cycle, this is the normal pattern I'm going through, don't take it personally. So I always found it interesting when people would not be aware of how their physical state actually affects their body or affects their thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, like you have to take personal responsibility for your well-being. So I eat a very clean animal-based diet. I exercise frequently. I get sunshine. I'm outside. I sleep as well, pretty well. So it's like all of these things that you can do and not think that you can sit on the couch eating a bag of chips and take a pill, right? Like that's not taking
Yeah,
personal
I don't think
responsibility.
Xanax really did much for the general population, did it? Is it
No,
Xanax
no.
or
I mean, all of those
Ativan?
psychotropic drugs are very, very, very harmful, very addictive. And they've done studies for years. There's no such thing as a chemical imbalance in the brain that was cooked up, right? So I think that, I mean, I guess I'm fortunate in that I turned my television off, unplugged it in like 2000,
Mhm.
right? So I don't have this
Yeah,
programming device just feeding me stuff. It's just not part of my reality.
yeah, yeah. No, I
And
agree.
so I think that we need to protect our attention. What are we paying
Hmm.
attention to? And then we have to carefully guide our intention and also our imagination, right? Do not use your imagination against yourself. Do not imagine the future that you don't want to pass. Because that's what
Yeah.
people worry, they fret, they worry. They're all like, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? I mean, there's so much out of our control, but just know that in the moment, if you are in a situation that you need to make a decision, if you're connected to your intuition and your inner wisdom, you're going to make a good decision. You don't need to worry about what might or might not happen, right?
I did a thing for one of my friend's kids. She's 20, mid 20s, so different life experiences for her, and she was so worried. So I
Hmm.
actually wrote out what worry actually is neurologically. I said, what's happening in your body? I said, you got out the pen and you wrote the lists, right? And I said, so
Hmm.
keep that pattern done. Because as soon as you're a prediction machine and you want to keep yourself safe and your body's triggering you because there's something potentially unknown, I was like, so you write out, if A happens, I've got it. If B happens, I've got it. If C happens, I got it. Because it's actually a physical thing that's going on in your body to keep you safe. And once you can see that programming, use it to your advantage, your body will settle down and the potential of going haywire in your imagination is different. But she just looked at me and went, really? And I was like, worry started off as very positive for us because we are prediction machines to keep our family and selves safe.
Right.
And we're actually learning we are doing what our body and our design has told us to. We've just framed it wrong and not let it complete
Yes.
and
Yes.
have faith and that trust. And you
Yeah.
would frame it in a trust in God, and I have to agree, but I probably word it differently. But it's that knowing the design and then kind of is where I'm looking at things and going, hang on, hang on. That
Yeah.
worry isn't a bad thing. That's
Well, and I
actually a good thing.
remember like when you were walking with me in the last chapter of my dad's life because you were like a an anchor for me, you know. I'm like,
Friend.
oh.
I was a friend.
And we explored and discovered like therapeutic writing, which I recommend for everyone. Like sit down 4 days in a row, 15 minutes in the morning, just write and throw it out. Don't worry about punctuation or whatever. If you're working on an issue, write about that. It doesn't matter. And like that brought me so much insight and peace. There's something cognitively superior to writing than speaking, you know? So I really hope the human race does not lose the art of writing.
And bless Kathy O'Brien for putting the
Right. Then that comes from her
is
work, and it's really pencil paper. It's not typing, it's not dictation. You got a pencil paper,
well, it takes
write
it
it
from the
out for
limbic
15
system
minutes.
into the cortex is what it does. Is so you're caught in that emotion in the physical, and then you can take it more into the intellectual. So it lets that neurological pathway actually complete, which again is by design, but for some reason, this design's been around for a long time, but we're still haven't got a user manual.
I could go into some conspiracy theories about that, but hey,
But you know what I mean?
we're here to give you a user manual the best we can, you know?
Yeah. No, it is it's quite interesting. And so if we're concluding this, is there anything that, see, I don't want to say, is there anything that you would highlight that
Yes. I mean,
would
and this has
really
nothing, I
want?
guess this doesn't, it kind of weaves through all of my work, but I think that the biggest threat to our future is despair, to give up hope. And I think that that's a tool of the enemy. the evil one is kind of how I frame it in my Eastern Orthodox perspective. Despair. Do not despair, no matter what you're going through, no matter what. Like, what we need to do is build a beautiful world for our children and our grandchildren and have hope. You know, it's interesting because you look around at all of the crappy appliances and house, like everything's being built in a shoddy fashion. And I remember listening to an Orthodox priest who, I think he was an abbot of a monastery. And on the land they were gifted, there was this beautiful log cabin that was built just to last for hundreds and hundreds of years. And he said, when you build something to last, something that's beautiful, something that's sturdy, it's because you have hope for the future. So let's all build something that's going to last, right? Whether it's a business, whether it's a family, whether it's a community, let's build these things to last into the future because if we succumb to despair, then I mean that's the easy way out. But that doesn't work. So just, faith, hope, and love, right?
Hallelujah. That was awesome. That I got the goosies when you said that.